all right, we ain't gonna talk about no stats. We ain't finna talk about no game in summer league. We not finna evaluate no on-court basketball right now. We gonna talk about the absolute disrespect. The disrespect that the NBA community, that the NBA officials, that the NBA personnel, the decision makers in the NBA, everybody involved in the process of marketing the game of basketball is off their rocker. We are in a prime position where the NBA should be catapulting every single one of its stars, international and domestic. They should be catapulting every single one of them to frontline television. The NBA is in a position where it's had more international dominance than it's ever had before. You got revitalizations of positions that have been dead for years in the center position and even with the power forward. And what you're telling me is that rather than market the MVP of the NBA, one of the most popular leagues in the world, the NBA would rather sell you a New York Knicks and Atlanta Hawks game on Christmas Day than to give you the MVP of this freaking league, Showtime. They would rather sell you the number one basketball market that hasn't won a championship since 1971, that has his first All-NBA player since Carmelo Anthony in 2012-2013 season. They'd rather sell you a fourth seed New York Knicks team that got 4-1 by a bunch of kids in Atlanta. They'd rather sell you that matchup than let you see the MVP of the NBA, who had one of the top 10 offensive seasons ever in Nikola Jokic. Put up 26 points per game, 10.8 rebounds per game, and 8.3 assists per game. The only two other players in NBA history to put up those numbers are Russell freaking Westbrook and Oscar Robertson. In the NBA playoffs this season, he's only the third player, with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and with Wilt Chamberlain, only the third player to ever have a 30-20-10 game in the NBA playoffs, Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic is the first player in NBA history ever to put up 30 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists on 40% shooting from the three-point line, 50% from the field, and 90% from the line. The only player ever. In 10 games in the playoff this year, he carried his team past the first round without another all-star on his team, missing his second best player, the best pick-and-roll combination in the NBA, in Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Without him, he 4-2 Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. I don't care what nobody has to say about that. Flawed or not, he beat him. Put the team on his back. In the playoffs in 10 games, he averaged 29.8 points per game, almost 11 rebounds per game, and over 5 assists per game. And you telling me that you can't put the MVP of the freaking NBA on Christmas Day games, let alone putting him on opening day. So what you're telling me is that he can go 13-5 without his second best player, and you don't even consider putting him on the broadcast? Let me bet. Last year, after the Denver Nuggets, let me go ahead and say to y'all, this ain't got nothing to do with just this year. This has been in motion for years. Last year, the Denver Nuggets played in the Western Conference Finals, being the only team to ever come back from 3-1 twice in the same playoffs. 3-1 down Utah Jazz. Jamal Murray goes for 50, 42, and 50. They come back and win that series. Jokic hits a Game 7 game winner over the now 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert. The next series, they beat Kawhi Leonard and Paul George down 3-1. Jokic had 16 points, 22 rebounds, and 13 assists in the Game 7. Jamal Murray has 40 points and puts Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and everybody else on skates the whole game. Game 7 win. And they play against the LA Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. And what does the NBA do? The next year, the New Orleans Pelicans had more national broadcast games than the Denver Nuggets did. The Pelicans. The Pelicans who couldn't even make the 10th seed in the playoffs. The Pelicans. Yeah, that Pelicans. So you telling me the NBA is now saying that on Christmas Day, we're going to have the Hawks and Knicks play, who are both inferior teams to the Nuggets. The Boston Celtics, who had nothing. They didn't do anything last year. They're playing against the Bucks. Golden State Warriors didn't make the playoffs. Not only that, they didn't even beat the freaking Memphis Grizzlies in the play-in. They are in. Playing against the Phoenix Suns, the Brooklyn Nets versus the LA Lakers, of course. And then Dallas Mavericks versus the Utah Jazz. So what you telling me is that you would rather see Luka Doncic go up against Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell rather than Luka Doncic going up against the reigning NBA MVP. In a spectacular Balkan showdown on American Christmas Day. This is utter garbage. Now, I'm from Denver. I understand it. Look, I remember the days when the Nuggets didn't have a superstar. I watched the Nuggets when they didn't have a superstar. You know what I was told? Get a premium highlight player. Get an MVP and things will change. They will respect your team. What happens now? Jokic wins the MVP, puts up historical numbers, has a PER of 31.3, leads the NBA in box plus minus by a mile, win shares by a mile, value over replacement player by a mile, number one player on Raptor, don't matter, a plus defender, one of the key steal leaders and deflectors in the NBA. First big man to average 8 assists a game since Wilt Chamberlain. 26, 10, and 8. And you telling me that he can't play on Christmas because you don't want to watch. He can't play on opening day because you don't want to watch. Well, let me tell you how much sense that makes. 2 years ago, the NBA GMs, all of them, they were polled and they said, who is the most exciting team to watch in the NBA? And do you know who they chose? The Denver freaking Nuggets. So not only Michael Porter Jr. Last year, in NBA history, the only person to ever have a more efficient season, averaging over 19 points per game in NBA history, is Wilt Chamberlain. And you're telling me you got a 23-year-old budding superstar who eventually could be a top 10 player in the league, and you would rather not put him on television, even though they made it to the second round of the Western Conference. You'd rather have the Dallas Mavericks, who were out in the first round, the Utah Jazz, who have Rudy Gobert, who hasn't done anything in the playoffs yet, haven't made it to a Western Conference Finals, the Atlanta Hawks, who again, great young team, but they not the Nuggets, and the New York Knicks, and the Boston Celtics. You would rather have that over the MVP of the league. Let me guess, let me count. How many of these players and how many of these teams have an MVP on their roster? Steph Curry, 1. Dallas, no. Utah, no. Lakers, LeBron, Westbrook. The Nets, Harden, Durant. The Bucks, Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Celtics, no. And the Knicks, definitely no. So you would rather have these players and these teams on deck rather than one of the winningest franchises in the NBA the last 3 seasons, who's made it past to the second round the last 3 seasons, who has the MVP on their roster, who when Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, Will Barton, and Jokic were all healthy, when Michael Porter Jr. were the number 1 team in basketball. They won 8 straight games. You would rather watch this and diminish your own product by not putting your best players on the court. You'd rather do that than give the MVP of your league the respect that he deserves. It's wild. It's outlandish. And I'm tired of it. Denver's tired of it. Real NBA fans are tired of it. And y'all, let me go ahead. I'm gonna say this. It's not the Knicks. It's not the players. They aren't the issue. The Hawks, they aren't the issue. The Jazz players, they aren't the issue. The Celtics players, that's not the issue. It's the way the NBA markets the game. It's the way the NBA tells the story. Why do you think the NFL is doubling their ratings? Why do you think that the NFL draft has more viewers than the NBA finals? Well, because the NFL values the shield. The NFL values the team. We're not going to diminish the Cincinnati Bengals. We're not going to diminish the Cleveland Browns. We're not going to diminish the Miami Dolphins. We're not going to diminish the Detroit Lions. We want them to be good. Let's get them franchise quarterbacks. Let's give them incentive to be good. Let's assist them in being good. Let's put them on television. Let's make sure that if they have a primetime player, put them on television. Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the sport, and he plays in freaking Missouri. He plays in Kansas City. Primetime games galore. Tom Brady plays in Tampa, Florida. Primetime games. Aaron Rodgers plays in Wisconsin. Primetime game. Russell Wilson plays in Seattle. Primetime games. They're not putting those teams above the Jets. I'm sorry, they're not putting the Jets and the Giants above those teams. That's lunacy. Lunacy. Absolute lunacy. Absolutely ludicrous. What are you doing? And again, I know it's not just me. Go check Twitter. Everybody's asking this question. How you going to disrespect the MVP of your league? Don't make no sense. And 1,000%, Nikola Jokic is the most disrespected, unappreciated MVP in modern NBA history. You get people like Nick Wright talking about he's the worst MVP in 35 years. If Nikola Jokic, I said this on Twitter, I'll say it again. If Jokic had ever played for the New York Knicks, he would already have a peak season better than any New York Knicks player in their entire franchise history, including Walt Frazier, including Willis Reed, including Carmelo Anthony, including Allen Houston, including anybody you want to talk about, Patrick Ewing included, Latrell Sprewell, name them all. None of them is touching what Jokic just did. Nikola Jokic has the third highest box plus minus in NBA history behind Michael Jordan and LeBron James. And you sitting here telling me you don't want to put him on television? All because he's a center? Okay. Don't make no sense. First center to win MVP since 2000. Oh, is it because he's international? Luka's playing in the game. Luka has the game on primetime television, and so does Giannis Antetokounmpo. So what's the problem? Oh, it just must be his play style, even though the GM said they prefer to watch the Denver Nuggets over anybody else. All right, bet. I'm tired of it. I know you're tired of it. You've been on my channel all year. I've been advocating for Nikola Jokic all season. We ain't even in NBA basketball yet. We in summer league. Camp don't start for another month and a half. And here we are having to have the same dumb conversation. NBA, do better. Market your players. Tell their story. Make them the centerpiece. Don't make New York and LA markets the centerpiece. Because all you doing is diminishing your own product. Right now, the best players in the NBA, the future of the NBA, Denver, Milwaukee, Dallas. Market your teams. Market your superstar. Stop telling us who we need to watch. It's Joke. He's the MVP. Give him his respect.